Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about precipitation. We've already discussed condensation and evaporation at great length, and now we need to discuss the types of precipitation. So have your notebooks handy and a pencil and get ready to learn about precipitation. First of all, what exactly is precipitation? Well, it's water in any form that falls from the atmosphere. So snow is precipitation, rain, freezing rain, sleet, and hail. Any of these things coming down from the atmosphere is considered precipitation. So we're going to look at each of these individually and learn how they're formed, because each one of those are formed in a different way, and it's quite interesting actually to learn the difference between sleet and hail and rain and freezing rain. So the first thing we'll discuss is snow. Snow is precipitation in the form of ice crystals. So as the water vapor goes up to the sky and condenses, remember condensation means for the vapor to cool and then turn back to liquid, so it condenses up in the sky, it forms ice crystals because of the temperature. It's pretty cold up there. In fact, most precipitation begins as snow as it falls from the clouds. So because it is cold up in the atmosphere, up in the clouds, as that snow falls, then it turns to rain as it warms up, as it's coming down through the atmosphere. Okay, so our next type of precipitation would be rain. Again, as water vapor gathers and condenses, remembering that's cooling and turning back to liquid, the drops become too heavy to stay in the air and gravity does pull the water drops down. In order for it to be qualified as rain, the drop must be at least 0.5 millimeter in diameter. Remember, millimeter, pretty small measurement. It has to be half of that for it to be considered rain. Otherwise, it's just called mist. Okay, the next type of precipitation is freezing rain. So freezing rain is when the snow completely melts on the way down from the clouds, so it's turned back to liquid on the way down. But then as it gets closer to the earth, there's a thin layer of freezing air, and then as that passes through there, it cools that water down again, and as soon as it touches anything, the ground, cars, power lines, trees, it freezes on contact. If you've ever been out in an ice storm or driving on ice, it is very scary and very dangerous. Notice the diagram. As the snow comes down, it melts because of the temperature, and then it turns back. It turns very cold, and then it freezes on contact. Now, please draw this diagram in your notebook. Make sure that you label it and that it is neat. You can add the little power lines there at the bottom. Okay, the next type of precipitation is sleet. Now, if you're like me, I used to think sleet was just small hail, just little particles of hail, and it was a lot smaller, but it was just called sleet. But that's not the case. Sleet is formed on the way down from the clouds. Hail is formed up in the clouds, as we'll see in just a minute, and sleet is formed in the air away from the clouds. So look at the diagram. You've got your clouds. The snowflakes are coming down. They go through some warm air, so they melt, turning back to liquid. And then there's a layer of very cold air where those pellets are going through, and then they become ice and fall as sleet. So snow to liquid and then back to little ice pellets. So they freeze before they hit the ground, unlike freezing rain, which freezes when it hits the ground. So just a couple of differences there. Okay, I'd like for you to draw this diagram in your notebook as well. Please make sure that you label it and that it is neat. If you want to add color to it, that would be great. Maybe help you remember that better. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is hail. Hail to me is very interesting. It's kind of scary, but it is interesting. Hail forms during thunderstorms. The updrafts of air carry the water droplets high in the atmosphere. So if you look at the diagram, notice the dotted line. There's the freezing level. So the rain wants to come down, but because of the updrafts, because of the wind, it carries that back up into the clouds, high in the clouds where it's super cold, and then they freeze. It becomes little pellets of ice. Well, as that ice wants to fall because of gravity, the updrafts are so strong it carries that ice back up into the clouds over and over again. This process can take place many times before the hail finally falls. So if you think about the larger the hail, you have to know then the larger or the stronger the winds are. So the worse the storm is. So the gravity pulls the newly formed ice down. The updrafts carry the ice back into the clouds over and over again, causing the hailstone to grow. Of course, again, like I said, the stronger the winds, the larger the hail. And then eventually the hailstone is too heavy and falls. So I'd like you to draw this diagram in your notebook. Make sure that you're pretty detailed. It's a little bit of a detailed diagram, more than the others. And then label. And if you want to, you can again add that color with the arrows just to make sure you know how hail is formed. And then I thought, just for fun, you don't need to take notes on this, but sometimes you hear on the news they'll say, oh, that hail was quarter size or baseball size, which is pretty large. They do actually use those terms to help everybody to understand kind of what the size is. They do actually take measurements, but you will also hear the other nickel, quarter, half-dollar terms used as well to describe hail. I can't even imagine grapefruit or softball size hail. That would do major damage. All right, you are finished with your notes about precipitation. I will be checking your notes on Friday, so you still have about 3 days. I've given you 3 days to watch this and take your notes, so you can take your time. There's really not a lot to do here, but I do need you to complete it. And then after I've checked everybody's notebook, we will experiment and we will make hail in a test tube. One of my favorite activities, and I know that you'll like it. So make sure your notes are nice and neat and complete, and then I will check them on Friday.